Think Germany is just about beer and bratwurst? Wait until you find out about the country where it's illegal to run out of gas on the highway, where entire villages move their houses to new locations, and where you can get fined 25,000 euros for accidentally insulting someone's dog. You won't believe what I discovered about this country that'll completely change how you see Germans forever. Number 15. Germany has villages that literally pick up and move to entirely new locations when they get bored of their current spot. In the Lausitz region, entire communities of 500 to 1,200 people regularly relocate their houses, churches, and even cemeteries to completely different areas whenever coal mining operations expand, or when residents decide they want better scenery. You heard right. German engineering has perfected the art of moving entire buildings intact, with specialized crews that can relocate a 200-year-old church or a 3-story house without damaging a single window. The most incredible part? German law requires that relocated communities maintain their exact original layout, so streets, property boundaries, and neighbor relationships stay identical in the new location. Over 130 German villages have been completely relocated since 1960, with some communities moving up to 15 kilometers away from their original sites. Here's the funny part. German postal services, internet providers, and even pizza delivery companies are legally required to maintain the same addresses and service routes, creating surreal situations where your house address stays the same, but your actual location changes by several miles. Think this sounds expensive? The German government pays relocation costs that average 2.8 million euros per village, including compensation for temporary housing, moving expenses, and emotional distress payments to residents who are attached to their old neighborhood. One Saxon village has been moved 3 times since 1975, and residents joke that they're Germany's only nomadic community with permanent mailing addresses. Number 14. German pedestrians can receive 500 euro fines for the crime of crossing streets incorrectly, even when no cars are present. Jaywalking in Germany isn't just illegal, it's considered a serious moral failing that reflects poorly on your character and can result in hefty financial penalties plus public shaming from other pedestrians. You won't believe this, but German police issue over 180,000 jaywalking citations annually, and the fines increase dramatically if children witness your illegal street crossing behavior. Here's the scary part. Crossing against a red light when children are present can result in 1,200 euro fines plus mandatory traffic safety courses because German law considers jaywalking in front of minors a form of corrupting youth through bad example. German pedestrians will stand at empty intersections at 3 a.m. waiting for walk signals to change, even when there are no cars visible in any direction for kilometers. The social pressure is intense. Other Germans will loudly scold jaywalkers with phrases like "Das ist verboten" and give disapproving stares that can make tourists feel like criminals. Think this sounds excessive? German traffic psychology research shows that children who see adults jaywalk are 40% more likely to develop reckless behavior patterns. So Germans view strict pedestrian law enforcement as essential child protection. Sounds unbelievable, but German pedestrian behavior is so rigidly controlled that tourists often mistake busy German sidewalks for organized military formations because everyone follows traffic rules with such precise timing and coordination. Number 13. Germany has a legal system where insulting someone can land you in prison for up to 5 years, and the definition of insult includes things that would, honestly, shock most people. German defamation laws are so strict that calling someone stupid, questioning their professional competence, or even making jokes about their appearance can result in criminal charges and some pretty serious jail time. You heard right. German courts process over 200,000 insult cases every year, with penalties ranging from 500 euro fines to actual imprisonment for verbal offenses that, in most other countries, would be protected as free speech. Here's the unbelievable part. German law considers insulting someone's pet to be just like insulting the owner, so making negative comments about a person's dog or cat can result in the same legal consequences as personal defamation. German police actually maintain detailed databases of citizen complaints about verbal insults, and repeat offenders face increasingly harsh sentences that can include community service, anger management courses, and even social media monitoring. The most shocking aspect? German insult laws apply to social media posts, private conversations that are overheard by others, and even sarcastic comments made in professional settings. One American businessman learned this the hard way when his German colleagues pressed criminal charges after he jokingly called their presentation a bit boring during a company meeting, resulting in a €3,200 fine and mandatory cultural sensitivity training. Think free speech exists in Germany? German courts have ruled that freedom of expression doesn't protect speech that damages someone's personal honor, creating a legal system where, believe it or not, hurt feelings can literally send you to jail. The weird part? Germans are so sensitive about insults that many conversations sound artificially polite and formal, with people using elaborate courtesy phrases to avoid accidentally saying something that could be construed as offensive. Number 12. German drivers face automatic license suspension for the bizarre crime of running out of gasoline on the Autobahn. Running out of fuel on German highways isn't just inconvenient. It's actually a serious traffic violation that can cost you €70 fines, points on your license, and temporary driving bans because German law considers it avoidable negligence that endangers other drivers. You won't believe this, but German police patrol highways specifically looking for stranded motorists, and they're trained to tell the difference between legitimate mechanical failures and fuel negligence cases. Here's the scary part. If your car runs out of gas on the Autobahn, German law prohibits you from walking to get fuel, calling for help from the roadside, or even accepting assistance from other drivers, because pedestrians are completely forbidden on highway surfaces under any circumstances. German drivers who run out of fuel have to wait in their vehicles until official highway assistance arrives, then pay €150 for mandatory towing services plus additional fees for fuel delivery and safety violation processing. Over 25,000 German drivers every year receive citations for fuel-related highway infractions, and repeat offenders can actually lose their licenses for up to 6 months. Think this sounds harsh? German highway engineers argue that cars stopped for fuel emergencies cause 15% of Autobahn accidents, so preventing fuel negligence is considered essential public safety policy. Sounds unbelievable, but German gas stations near Autobahn entrances display signs calculating exactly how much fuel you need to reach the next service area. And running out of gas despite these warnings is considered willful recklessness that, honestly, deserves punishment. Number 11. Germany has quiet laws so extreme that, believe it or not, using your washing machine at the wrong time can result in eviction from your apartment. German Ruhezeit, or quiet time, regulations dictate that residents cannot operate washing machines, vacuum cleaners, or dishwashers between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., and violating these noise restrictions 3 times can legally terminate your lease agreement. You heard right. German landlords employ noise monitors who patrol apartment buildings, listening for illegal appliance usage during quiet hours, and tenant complaints about neighbors' laundry schedules are taken as seriously as property damage reports. Here's the funny part. German apartments come with detailed instruction manuals explaining exactly which household activities are permitted during different time periods, including specific decibel limits for televisions, radio volumes, and even private conversations. German noise enforcement is so strict that playing musical instruments requires special permits from building management, and piano practice is limited to 2 hours per day during designated time frames that can vary by neighborhood. Over 15,000 German rental disputes annually involve noise violations, and German courts consistently rule in favor of noise complainants, even when the sounds are barely audible. Think this sounds like living in a library? German apartment buildings maintain quiet logs where residents record neighbor noise violations, creating detailed documentation that can be used as evidence in eviction proceedings. One Munich resident was evicted after neighbors complained about her excessively loud morning coffee preparation routine that violated the 6 a.m. noise restriction by starting at 5:45 a.m. The contrast is mind-blowing. Germans can legally blast music and run power tools during permitted hours, but operating a dishwasher at 10:05 p.m. is grounds for immediate lease termination. Number 10. German dating culture includes a social rule so backwards that it would be considered deeply offensive in most other countries. German men are expected to split every expense exactly down the middle on dates, including individual food items, drinks, and even shared appetizers, because paying for a woman's meal is considered insulting behavior that implies she cannot afford her own food. You won't believe this, but German restaurants automatically bring separate checks for couples, and German women become genuinely offended if men attempt to pay for their meals because it's viewed as condescending and sexist behavior. Here's the unbelievable part. German dating apps include specific warnings about payment expectations, and profiles often include statements like "I pay for my own food" to prevent awkward financial situations during first meetings. German couples use smartphone apps to calculate precise bill splitting that accounts for individual consumption down to individual sips of shared beverages, creating elaborate mathematical exercises that would honestly shock Americans accustomed to traditional dating chivalry. The most shocking aspect: German men who offer to pay for dates are often perceived as manipulative or controlling, with women interpreting financial generosity as attempts to create obligations or power imbalances in the relationship. Over 70% of German women prefer splitting costs equally because they view financial independence as essential to romantic equality and mutual respect. Think this sounds unromantic? Germans argue that equal payment creates healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. And German divorce rates are 20% lower than countries with traditional dating payment structures. One American woman described German dating as aggressively egalitarian after her German boyfriend insisted on splitting a €3.50 coffee bill down to the exact cent, explaining that financial equality was essential to relationship authenticity. The weird part? German couples continue splitting expenses even after marriage and having children, with many maintaining completely separate bank accounts and itemized household expense spreadsheets that track individual contributions to shared costs like groceries, utilities, and childcare expenses. Number 9. Germany has an employment system so rigid that getting fired requires a legal process more complex than most criminal trials. German labor laws make it virtually impossible to terminate employees without spending months in court proceedings that cost employers an average of €15,000 per dismissal attempt, even for workers who show up drunk or refuse to do their jobs. You heard right, German employees enjoy job security so extreme that employers must. Media, HR manager documenting employee performance, manager writing notes in office, employee file folders being organized, document performance issues for a minimum 6-month period, provide multiple formal warnings, offer retraining opportunities, and prove that termination is the only possible solution before courts will approve firing anyone. Here's the scary part. German workers can sue for wrongful termination even after voluntarily quitting their jobs, and courts frequently award damages ranging from €50,000 to €200,000 for employees who claim they felt pressured to resign. German employment contracts are so worker-friendly that employees can take unlimited sick days with full pay as long as they provide doctor's notes, and questioning the validity of medical excuses is considered discriminatory behavior that can result in additional legal penalties for employers. Over 400,000 German employment disputes reach court systems annually, and employees win 85% of these cases regardless of their actual job performance or behavior. Think this creates lazy workers? German productivity rates are among the world's highest because employers invest heavily in training and workplace satisfaction to avoid the nightmare of trying to fire unsatisfactory employees. One Berlin company spent 3 years and €75,000 in legal fees trying to terminate an employee who had been caught sleeping at his desk multiple times, only to have courts rule that the company should have provided better chairs and workplace wellness programs instead of pursuing termination. The contrast is mind-blowing. German employees have more job security than most Americans have housing security, creating a work culture where people expect to stay with the same employer for their entire careers. Sounds unbelievable, but German companies often find it cheaper to keep paying unproductive employees rather than navigating the legal maze required for termination, leading to situations where workers openly acknowledge they're being paid to do nothing while their employers wait for them to voluntarily quit or retire. Number 8. German bureaucracy operates under a paper-only system so extreme that digital documents are legally worthless, and conducting basic life activities requires literal mountains of physical paperwork. Germany remains the only developed country where government agencies refuse to accept digital documents, email communications, or electronic signatures for official transactions, requiring citizens to submit physical paper forms for everything from address changes to business licenses. You won't believe this, but the average German adult generates over 50 kilograms of bureaucratic paperwork annually, and German homes typically dedicate entire rooms to storing mandatory government documents that must be kept for decades. Here's the unbelievable part. German law requires citizens to obtain official permission for activities that other countries consider basic human rights, including moving to a new address, changing jobs, getting married, or even painting your house exterior a different color. German bureaucratic processes involve multiple government agencies that don't communicate with each other, forcing citizens to carry identical paperwork between different offices to complete single transactions that can take months to finalize. The most shocking aspect: German government workers are legally prohibited from providing advice or assistance with form completion, so citizens must hire professional form helpers who charge 200 to 500 euros to navigate basic bureaucratic requirements. Over 15 million Germans annually pay professional services to complete government paperwork that should be simple administrative tasks, creating a massive industry built around bureaucratic complexity. Think this sounds inefficient? German officials argue that paper systems prevent digital fraud and ensure long-term document preservation, but critics point out that German bureaucracy creates more problems than it solves. One American expat described spending 6 weeks in visiting 12 different government offices just to register her address, carrying 47 different forms and certificates between agencies that were located in different cities. The weird part? Germans have become so accustomed to bureaucratic torture that they plan major life events around government processing times, scheduling weddings and job changes months in advance to accommodate the paperwork requirements that would shock citizens of more efficiently managed countries. Number 7. Germany has a social drinking culture so integrated into daily life that alcohol consumption is actually legally required for certain professional activities and social obligations. German workplace culture includes mandatory alcohol consumption during business meetings, company celebrations, and professional networking events, where, honestly, refusing to drink is considered antisocial behavior that can damage your career prospects and business relationships. You heard right. German business etiquette actually requires participating in alcohol-based bonding activities, and employees who decline drinking for religious, health, or personal reasons often face social isolation and reduced promotion opportunities. Here's the unbelievable part. German labor contracts often include specific clauses requiring attendance at alcohol-centered company events, and missing these mandatory drinking sessions can be grounds for performance improvement plans or even disciplinary action. German professional associations organize regular Stammtisch meetings where business deals are negotiated over multiple rounds of beer, and industry networking depends heavily on participants' willingness to engage in extended drinking sessions that can last 6 to 8 hours. The most shocking aspect? German companies budget alcohol expenses as legitimate business costs, spending an average of 12,000 euros annually per employee on workplace drinking events that are considered essential to maintaining professional relationships and company culture. Over 2.5 million German workers participate in mandatory workplace drinking activities every month, and German courts have ruled that alcohol participation is a reasonable job requirement that doesn't constitute discrimination or harassment. Think this creates workplace problems? German businesses argue that shared drinking experiences build trust and collaboration that improves overall productivity and job satisfaction among employees. One Frankfurt finance company requires new hires to complete a beer compatibility assessment during the interview process, evaluating candidates' willingness to participate in after-work drinking sessions that are considered essential to team integration. The weird part? German workers who don't drink alcohol often carry fake beer or use elaborate excuses to avoid workplace drinking requirements, creating underground networks of teetotaler employees who help each other navigate alcohol-centered professional environments without damaging their career prospects. Number 6. German environmental laws are so extreme that citizens can face criminal prosecution for incorrectly sorting their household garbage, with penalties including jail time for repeat offenders. Germany operates the world's most complex waste management system with 47 different recycling categories that citizens must master, and improper garbage sorting is considered an environmental crime punishable by fines up to 25,000 euros, plus potential imprisonment for chronic violators. You won't believe this, but German neighborhoods employ waste monitoring officers who inspect individual household garbage bins and issue citations for sorting violations, creating a surveillance system where your trash basically becomes evidence of criminal behavior. Here's the scary part. German garbage laws are so complicated that the government publishes 200-page instruction manuals explaining proper waste categorization, and citizens regularly attend mandatory recycling education seminars just to avoid accidentally breaking environmental regulations. German waste enforcement officers use specialized tools to examine garbage contents, and they're legally authorized to search through personal refuse to identify sorting violations and trace illegal disposal back to specific households. Over 800,000 Germans annually receive waste sorting citations, and repeat offenders face escalating penalties that can include community service, environmental education classes, and eventual criminal charges for what they call willful environmental destruction. Think this sounds reasonable? German recycling rules are so strict that throwing away a pizza box with grease stains requires removing the contaminated portions and sorting different sections into separate waste categories, creating elaborate disposal rituals that can take several minutes for single items. One Munich resident was prosecuted for environmental crimes after waste officers discovered she had been throwing banana peels into regular trash instead of organic waste bins, resulting in 1,200 euros in fines plus mandatory composting education courses. The contrast is honestly mind-blowing. Germans spend more time thinking about garbage disposal than most people spend on meal planning, and German children learn waste sorting with the same intensity that other countries teach mathematics. Sounds unbelievable, but German apartment buildings maintain detailed waste violation logs, and landlords can legally evict tenants for repeated recycling infractions that are considered property damage and environmental irresponsibility. Number 5. German social interaction operates under unwritten rules so rigid and complex that violating them can result in complete social ostracism and professional blacklisting that destroys careers and personal relationships. German society functions according to thousands of invisible social protocols that govern everything from conversation topics to personal space requirements, and foreigners who unknowingly break these rules often find themselves permanently excluded from German social circles without ever really understanding why. You won't believe this, but Germans maintain mental databases of social infractions committed by acquaintances, friends, and colleagues, and accumulating too many protocol violations can result in systematic social punishment that includes exclusion from professional opportunities, social events, and community activities. Here's the unbelievable part. German social rules are never explicitly explained to outsiders, creating a secret code system where natives can instantly identify and reject people who don't understand proper German behavioral expectations. German social infractions include arriving more than 5 minutes late to casual meetings, discussing personal finances or relationship problems, expressing strong opinions about politics or religion, asking personal questions about family or career choices, and dozens of other behaviors that would be considered normal conversation in other cultures. The most shocking aspect? Germans coordinate social exclusion efforts through informal communication networks that can destroy someone's reputation and social standing across entire communities, creating blacklisting effects that follow violators for years or even decades. Over 40% of foreign residents in Germany report experiencing systematic social isolation that they attribute to unknowingly breaking cultural rules that were never clearly explained, and integration programs specifically address the challenge of learning German social protocols that can take years to master. Think this sounds paranoid? German social rejection is so systematic and coordinated that it resembles organized punishment campaigns, with entire friend groups and professional networks simultaneously cutting contact with protocol violators in ways that would be considered bullying or harassment in more individualistic cultures. One British expat described feeling like she was living in a social minefield where any conversation could accidentally trigger invisible rules that would result in immediate and permanent social consequences. The weird part? Germans genuinely believe this rigid social system creates harmony and predictability, and they view people who struggle with protocol compliance as inherently selfish or culturally inferior, creating self-reinforcing cycles where social exclusion is justified as necessary community protection against disruptive outside influences. Number 4. Germany operates a healthcare system so controlling and invasive that patients can be legally forced into medical treatments they don't want, and refusing doctors' orders can result in loss of employment, housing, and social benefits. German healthcare law grants medical professionals extraordinary authority over patients' personal lives, including the power to mandate specific treatments, lifestyle changes, and behavioral modifications that patients must follow or face legal and financial consequences. You won't believe this, but German doctors can legally prohibit patients from working, traveling, or engaging in normal social activities based on medical opinions, and these restrictions are enforced by government agencies that monitor compliance and punish violations. Here's the scary part. German health insurance systems require patients to follow all medical recommendations exactly as prescribed, and deviating from treatment plans can result in loss of insurance coverage, reduced benefits, and financial penalties that can bankrupt families. German medical authorities maintain detailed surveillance systems that track patient behavior, medication compliance, and lifestyle choices, creating comprehensive health profiles that are shared between doctors, insurance companies, employers, and government agencies without patient consent. Over 2 million Germans annually face penalties for non-compliance with medical directives, including forced hospitalization, supervised medication administration, and court-ordered lifestyle restrictions that can include dietary requirements, exercise mandates, and social interaction limitations. The most shocking aspect: German patients who refuse recommended treatments can be declared mentally incompetent and placed under medical guardianship that removes their legal right to make personal healthcare decisions. German health surveillance includes monitoring prescription drug usage, tracking medical appointment attendance, and investigating patients who seek second opinions or alternative treatments, creating a system where questioning medical authority is treated as suspicious behavior that warrants increased oversight. Think this protects patient health? Critics argue that German healthcare authoritarianism creates fear-based relationships between doctors and patients that discourage honest communication and informed consent, leading to worse health outcomes despite comprehensive medical control. One American living in Germany described feeling medically imprisoned after doctors issued work restrictions that cost her job, travel bans that prevented family visits, and lifestyle mandates that controlled her daily activities based on a minor health condition that wouldn't warrant any restrictions in other countries. The weird part? Germans view medical authoritarianism as caring paternalism that protects people from their own poor health decisions, and patients who resist medical control are often seen as irresponsible individuals who deserve whatever consequences result from their non-compliance. Number 3. German financial systems operate under surveillance capitalism so extreme that banks monitor and control citizens' spending patterns, and making purchases the government considers inappropriate can freeze your accounts and trigger financial investigations. German banking regulations require financial institutions to report suspicious transactions to government authorities, but the definition of suspicious includes perfectly legal purchases that bureaucrats consider morally questionable or politically problematic. You heard right. German banks maintain behavioral profiles of customer spending habits and automatically flag purchases that deviate from government-approved consumption patterns, creating a financial surveillance system that monitors every transaction for signs of unapproved lifestyle choices. Here's the unbelievable part. German citizens can have their bank accounts frozen for purchasing items the government considers harmful to society, including certain books, political materials, health supplements, or even excessive amounts of cash withdrawals that suggest attempts to avoid financial monitoring. German financial surveillance algorithms analyze spending patterns to identify citizens who might be engaging in activities the government wants to discourage, and these automated systems can restrict access to money without any human oversight or appeals process. Over 500,000 German bank accounts annually experience restrictions or investigations triggered by algorithmic analysis of purchase behavior, and citizens often don't discover these limitations until they're denied access to their own money during emergencies. The most shocking aspect? German banks cooperate with government agencies to enforce social control through financial pressure, freezing accounts of people who attend protests, support unpopular political causes, or associate with individuals considered politically problematic. German financial surveillance extends to monitoring international transactions, cryptocurrency purchases, and even cash deposits that exceed arbitrary limits designed to force citizens into trackable digital payment systems. Think this prevents crime? German financial monitoring systems are used primarily for social and political control rather than criminal investigation, targeting law-abiding citizens whose spending patterns suggest independent thinking or resistance to government-preferred behaviors. One German journalist discovered his accounts were frozen after purchasing books critical of government policy, and bank officials explained that his pattern of subversive purchases triggered automated security protocols that required months of investigation to resolve. The weird part? Germans have largely accepted financial surveillance as normal banking practice, and most citizens self-censor their purchases to avoid triggering algorithmic flags that could result in financial restrictions, creating a population that modifies their behavior based on fear of economic punishment for thought crime. Number 2. German education systems practice psychological manipulation so extreme that children are systematically trained to report their parents, friends, and neighbors to government authorities for displaying unapproved attitudes or behaviors. German schools include mandatory curriculum that teaches children to identify and report adults who express opinions the government considers dangerous, creating generation-wide surveillance networks where kids become informants against their own families and communities. You won't believe this, but German educational materials specifically train students to recognize antisocial thinking patterns in family conversations, friend group discussions, and community interactions, then provide detailed instructions for reporting these observations to teachers and social services. Here's the scary part. German children as young as 6 years old are taught to view independent thinking and questioning authority as warning signs of potential domestic terrorism or social deviance that requires immediate intervention by government officials. German schools maintain detailed files on students' family political opinions, religious beliefs, and social attitudes based on information gathered through classroom assignments designed to extract personal family information through seemingly innocent educational activities. Over 100,000 German children annually provide information about their families to school authorities through programs disguised as social studies projects, creative writing exercises, and current events discussions that are actually intelligence-gathering operations targeting private family beliefs. The most shocking aspect: German children receive praise and rewards for reporting family members who express unapproved opinions, creating psychological conditioning that makes kids view surveillance and betrayal as virtuous civic duties rather than family loyalty violations. German educational psychology deliberately creates emotional conflicts between children and parents by teaching kids that family love requires protecting relatives from their own dangerous thoughts through government intervention. Think this sounds like dystopian fiction? German child surveillance programs are presented as anti-bullying and extremism prevention initiatives that most parents support without understanding how these systems turn children into weapons against family autonomy and private thought. One German mother discovered that her 8-year-old daughter had been reporting family dinner conversations to teachers for months, providing detailed information about political discussions that resulted in social services investigations and mandatory parenting classes. The weird part? German children who refuse to participate in surveillance reporting are labeled as concerning students who receive special attention from school psychologists and social workers, creating additional pressure for kids to betray family privacy in order to avoid being classified as problematic themselves. Number 1. Germany operates a thought control system so comprehensive and terrifying that citizens can be imprisoned, fined, and destroyed professionally for privately holding opinions the government considers dangerous, even when these thoughts are never expressed publicly or acted upon. German hate speech laws have evolved into mind-reading operations where government agencies monitor private communications, personal relationships, and even psychological counseling sessions to identify and punish citizens for harboring unapproved thoughts about politics, history, or social issues. You heard right. German authorities prosecute people for private conversations, personal diary entries, and confidential therapy discussions that contain ideas the government has classified as forbidden thinking, creating a surveillance state that would make George Orwell's worst nightmares seem optimistic. Here's the unbelievable part. German law enforcement agencies employ advanced psychological profiling techniques to identify citizens who might be developing dangerous opinions before these thoughts are ever expressed, and preventive arrests are made based on algorithmic predictions of future thought crimes. German citizens can be prosecuted for possessing books, watching documentaries, or accessing websites that contain information the government considers harmful to public order, and these prosecutions occur even when there's no evidence of any intention to share or act on this forbidden knowledge. Over 50,000 Germans annually face legal consequences for thought-related offenses that include private conversations recorded by family members, social media posts made years earlier, and even search engine queries that suggest interest in prohibited ideas. The most terrifying aspect? German thought crime prosecutions can result in decades of imprisonment, complete financial destruction, and systematic social exclusion that destroys families and careers based entirely on ideas that never harmed anyone and were never intended for public consumption. German surveillance technology monitors citizens' digital communications in real time, using artificial intelligence to identify language patterns that suggest developing dangerous opinions, and this information is used to build prosecutorial cases against people who have committed no traditional crimes. Think this only affects extremists? German thought control laws are so broadly written that historians, journalists, and academics face criminal prosecution for researching historical events, questioning official narratives, or expressing scholarly opinions that contradict government-approved interpretations of sensitive subjects. One German university professor served 2 years in prison after government monitors discovered private emails where he questioned official historical accounts during academic research, and his conviction was upheld despite evidence that his work was purely scholarly and never intended for public distribution. The absolute horror of German thought crime enforcement is that citizens live in constant fear of their own minds, self-censoring not just their speech and actions, but their actual thoughts and curiosity, creating a population of psychological prisoners who have internalized government control so completely that they police their own consciousness to avoid criminal liability for unapproved thinking. So we've just discovered Germany's most terrifying secrets that reveal a surveillance state disguised as a modern democracy. Which one shocked you the most? The child informant programs, the thought police prosecutions, or maybe the financial surveillance that controls what you can buy? Subscribe for more mind-blowing exposés that'll open your eyes to what's really happening in countries you thought you knew.